Washoe County Library System welcomes you to our monthly series from the Nevada Historical Society, presents High Noon with Neal Cobb. This afternoon's topic is about finding and restoring part of the Reno Fire Department's past with Jon Wagner. My name is Samantha, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. And now I would like to introduce Sherry Hayes Zorn with the Nevada Historical Society. Again, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. And as always, thank you to the Washoe County Libraries for helping us put these great programs online for everybody. So we greatly appreciate their support. So hi, I'm Sherry. I am the curator of manuscripts here at the Nevada Historical Society, and we want to thank you for joining us today for our monthly High Noon series with a wonderful host, Neal Cobb. Today I think will be a great, well, every month is always kind of a fun topic, but I think this will be a great topic. Anybody who loves fire trucks, firemen, this is a really great topic of how they were able to save a historic Reno Fire Department piece of equipment. So without further ado, I want to introduce our honorary curator and longtime supporter of the Historical Society, our host, Neal Cobb. Thanks, Neal.
Thank you, Sherry. Jon Wagner, a retired Reno Fire Department employee, team member, is our speaker today. Jon was originally born in Miami, Florida. In 1978, he moved to Reno, Nevada. The first thing that he did was go to work for the Nevada Division of Forestry. The help that they had with the fire department people to build this station out there in Verdi, Nevada on Garrison Road. He was all part of that effort. He got very interested in preserving history while in Florida and watching National Geographic on the specials with the Spanish galleons that had been wrecked in the ocean floor. He was a very accomplished scuba diver, and snorkeling is pretty darn important too at times, especially in shallow water, right, Jon?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So Jon moved to Reno in 78, and he went to work for the Department of Forestry. But then things happened fast. In 1985, his first day of training on the Reno Fire Department was the crash of the Galaxy aircraft, January 21st, I think it was, 1985. Was his first day of training, and that was a major disaster. That plane crashed with everybody killed except one young person. So fire department people, and I have multiple friends that are fire department employees. My good friend Joe Granada sends out and organizes the retirement letter, and of course Jon gets a copy of that every month, and they keep together one way or the other. They were friends and partners and team members, some of them leaders at the time and grew into leaders later. But all of them were team players, and they are the same way when they are in civilian life. And that led to the effort with this fire engine, this 1917 ladder truck. So at this time, why don't we just welcome Jon Wagner and let him tell you about it, because it has been a wonderful trip, but it took him as a leader to ramrod the thing and still work with all of his team players. Welcome, Jon Wagner.
I appreciate the opportunity to share the story of the 1917 American LaFrance with everybody on this presentation. And from your introduction, I wanted to add that being an employee of the Reno Fire Department, we live at the fire stations about 1/3 of our lives. So the people at the fire department become our second family. And we stay in touch after we retire, and that's because the people that we work with have been a big part of our lives for a long time. So we don't see everybody every day, but we try to keep tabs on everybody and see how they're doing and keep up with how they're doing in retirement and how the rest of the fire department is doing while we're gone. Well, this has been a labor of love. I always wanted to restore an old fire truck and be part of the historic preservation movement. And I never had time to do it while I was working, but towards the end of my career, about 4 years before I retired, the opportunity came up to buy this 1917 American LaFrance, and I jumped at it. And my initial thoughts on it were I was going to change the oil and the spark plugs, and I was going to drive around an old fire engine. But then one of my old friends, Dave Larson, who was a past vice president of the American Truck Historical Society, convinced me that this was such a unique piece of history that it deserved a full frame-off restoration. And I realized that that would be way beyond my abilities as an individual. So I put together a group called Reno Fire Antique and Classic Apparatus, and we're a Nevada nonprofit corporation and a 501c3 federal tax exempt for donations group. And that group with an executive board has the one that has been helping me restore this ladder truck for the last 13 plus years. This is a 1917 American LaFrance, and its designation is a type 17-6. And the -6 means it's a 6-cylinder motor, and it's an 85-foot wooden spring-raised tillered aerial ladder. It is registration number 1775, and it was originally purchased by the Reno Fire Department in 1917. This first picture is a picture from the American LaFrance factory in Elmira, New York, of a rig that's similar to ours. We have the original picture of ours at the factory, but the picture was folded in thirds, and the front 1/3 is missing, and that picture ends right at the front bumper, so I used this picture instead. This is a catalog drawing of the Type 17 that shows the configuration. This will give you an idea of what it's going to look like when it's all finished and what you're looking at when we show you the parts. This is a catalog drawing of the tractor. The ladder truck is a tractor and trailer with a fifth wheel. This is how we found the tractor in March of 2006. It was in a 3-sided dirt floored shed, and it had been parked for about 26 years. And it was covered with dust, and it was near the California coast. It was actually in Portola Valley. So because it was in a shed, it had been protected a little bit from the salt air and the sea fog that would come in and maybe rust some other stuff. The trailer was in a lot worse condition because it was parked outside, and we'll see that later. But you can see the paint's in pretty good condition. The fenders are pretty banged up because the person that bought it purchased it in 1950, right after World War II, and he used it while his family was young, and they were in parades in the local area there in the South Bay area. And the kids would go from the front to the back, walking on the running boards and the fenders. So it got beat up quite a bit. This is what it looks like when we pulled it out of the barn and loaded on the trailer to transport it back to Reno. It looks just like the catalog drawing. Almost all the basic parts were there. It was missing some of the trim parts, the siren, the bell, the spotlight. Those kind of things were missing. And those are some of the things that we had to go out and locate during the restoration process. This was how we found the trailer. The trailer was parked on the edge of a field in 1950, and the person that bought it did not use the trailer while he was taking the tractor in the local parades. When he first parked it there, it was a well-maintained field, and it was parked right next to a fence on the far side of the trailer. It was on the inside of the field, but in the 56 years between the time when it was parked and when we found it, the trees had grown from outside of the pasture and growed up and through the frame of the trailer and through the fence. So we had a bit of an extrication problem when we got there. Also, the bottom part of the trailer was resting on the ground. So all of the running boards of the trailer and the lower metal parts of the trailer were all severely rusted. This is what it looked like after we cut the tree away from it and raised the front of the trailer a little bit. You can see that the running boards are all rotted and the bottom part of the front fender is all rusted. So the trailer was in a lot rougher shape than the tractor. Luckily, the wheels for the trailer had been stored on the porch of the owner of the rig, and they were protected from the weather, and we were able to put them back on the rear axle and use that to tow it out of its location. And that's what it looked like when we pulled it out from its resting place where it had been for 56 years. We were able to use an old fifth wheel dolly on the front, and the original wheels are on the rear axle. This is unloading the tractor in Reno. This is the shop on my property, and that's where we did all of the restoration work on the tractor for the first 9 years. And throughout this process, lots of guys from the fire department would come and help when we had heavy lifting to do or the restoration process. This is the right side of the 6-cylinder motor. It's the intake side, and you can see an aluminum intake manifold and an updraft carburetor. And you can also see in there a magneto and a distributor. It had a dual ignition system. It could run on each individually or run on both together. Also, in the left-hand side of the picture, you can see the steering column coming through the firewall, and the steering wheel in this rig is on the right-hand side. And that was common in a lot of early brass era American automobiles. And sometime during the 20s, I think most of the automobile manufacturers switched over to the left-hand steering wheel that we use today. This is the left side of the engine, the exhaust side, and you can see the exhaust manifold there. And also from the front down low, you see the water pump, which is an external water pump, and it's driven off of a shaft, which is driven off of the camshaft and the crankshaft. Behind the water pump is the generator that generates current for the headlights and the spotlight. And behind the generator is the starter, it's a huge starter there in the rear part of the engine compartment. And there are 12 spark plugs, 2 spark plugs for each cylinder. 1 spark plug goes to the magneto and 1 spark plug goes to the distributor. And on the top of the cylinder heads, you can see little petcocks with cups on top of them. And those are to prime the engine. There's a choke on the steering column, but it's an 824 cubic inch engine, and it takes a long time to get gasoline vapors from the carburetor into the cylinders. So what they did back in the day, the gasoline was not as good a quality as it is today, and it didn't vaporize as readily. So they would put gasoline directly into the cylinders through those petcops with the cups on top of the motor. And that helped it get started if it hadn't been running a while. The rear wheels are driven by a chain, like a big bicycle chain that's driven off of the sprocket in front. And we had to take the chain off and soak it in diesel and kerosene and dissolve all the old grease and re-lube it and make it look good again. This photograph is from January of 2007. We spent the first year or so taking the whole thing apart, the tractor apart as much as we could, getting it down to the frame. In this picture, you can see that all the engine parts have been removed except for the crankcase. And the crankcase is aluminum, which was a surprising finding for me because I didn't know they used very much aluminum back in the early 1900s. But that's what the crankcase is made out of. And the cylinders were made out of cast iron. This is the frame stripped down even more, and it's getting closer and closer to being ready to be sandblasted and painted. In the meantime, I don't know if everybody noticed or not, but the aerial ladder mechanism was not on the trailer when we purchased it. Sometime during the 1940s, when it was a part of the Treasure Island Naval Station Fire Department in the San Francisco Bay during World War II, something happened to the ladder and the aerial mechanism was removed from the trailer, and they used the tractor trailer as a service ladder with no aerial ladder attached to it, just to carry ground ladders. But we found this aerial ladder, the exact same year and model that we needed. These ladders were used from the early 1900s to the 1950s, and they went through several modifications, and mostly they were beefed up because of failures. They made them stronger and heavier. But this was a very early aerial ladder that it matched exactly what we needed. And at the time, I didn't know as much about these ladders as I know now. And we kind of lucked out that we got the right ladder for our model and year. But we bought that in Michigan and trailered it back to Reno. And this photograph was taken in the salt flats outside of Salt Lake City. This is the frame being sandblasted, and one of the Reno firemen had a sandblasting setup with a air compressor on his land out in Spanish Springs, and he donated the sandblasting services, and most of us helped sandblast it a little bit. Most of us was our first time sandblasting. After you sandblasted the frame was had a rough feeling to it. So we went over the entire frame with a wire brush, mechanized angle grinder wire brush, to polish it so that the paint would look better. And this is the frame after we've been over it with the wire brush. And during this time when we're working on taking all this apart, all of the components of the drivetrain and the engine and the parts that I mentioned were missing: the spotlights, the bell, the siren, that kind of stuff. We were looking for those and getting the parts that we had rebuilt. And this is our magneto, and it was rebuilt by Bob Smith in Gardnerville, Nevada. This is our carburetor. It's a Schebler carburetor. The gentleman that I mentioned that convinced me to do the frame off restoration, Dave Larson, he helped me tear this apart and clean it and soak it in carburetor cleaner, and we reassembled it. And he adjusted it initially, showed me how to do it, and it ran like a top when we actually got it put back together. We did the priming on the frame. It had a layer of etching primer and then a layer of sealing primer. And after we did the priming, we took the frame down to Rupert's Auto Body in Carson City, and they painted the color coat on the frame. And it was a single stage color coat. The Rupert family was very helpful, and I want to thank them. One of their sons, Ben Rupert, was a fireman, and he retired from the Reno Fire Department a short while ago. But he was the first engine company captain on the explosion in the UNR dorm. And he was, if he had been 1 minute earlier on that call, he would have possibly died in that explosion. So I want to say I'm glad he's still here with us, and I hope he's enjoying his retirement. We also had to get the dents taken out of the frame and filled some holes in them. And once Rupert's Auto Body did all that metal work for us, we brought the fenders back and had to make sure they still fit on the frame. And that's what this picture represents. This is a picture of the frame after it was painted and the Rupert's Auto Body crew that did the painting of the frame and the fenders. These are the front wheels. And again, we did the priming on the wheels and then took them to Rupert's Auto Body and they did the color coat. But you can see that everything is taped off. We had to use different paint on the metal as opposed to the wood spokes in the wheels. So there was lots of different stages to the painting in this process. These are some of the other parts. These are the brake pods, the brake drums, and the parts that fit over the axle that hold them. And these also had 3 coats of paint: the etching primer, the sealing primer, and the color coat. And we painted all the heavy duty parts and stuff in my shop. Rupert's Auto Body painted all of the parts that were sheet metal and the frame and stuff that would ultimately get probably some decoration on it. But the stuff that was just utilitarian and was a rougher finish, we painted in my shop. And through that process, we learned enough about painting to where we painted all of the parts on the trailer, from the fenders to the frame to the aerial apparatus. And we painted all of that except for the decoration. These are the brake bands, and they were restored by the Reno Brake Company. There's two brake bands on each drum, and the outside band is the service brake, and the inside band is the parking brake. Nowadays, most cars use the same brake shoes for both brakes, the parking brake and the service brake. This is the steering wheel of the tractor, and it's an aluminum spider and with, it's either teak or mahogany on the outside of the steering wheel. And this was originally glued together with a horse hoof glue. And my good friend, Lynn Dispro, who is a furniture restorer, took this all apart for us and refinished it and glued it together again with modern glue. These are the axle bearings for the wheels. There were 4 sets of bearings, and we took them all apart and cleaned them, and they were in good shape. So we just re-lubed them and reused them. This is the motor in the motor stand that was rebuilt by Ames Machine Shop in Reno, or Sparks actually. And they did an excellent job, and they treated us real good. They really love these old engines as much as we do. And you can see here that there are 3 T-heads, and each head contains 2 pistons, 2 cylinders. They're cast in pairs. And it's called a T-head because the housing for the valves stick out on each side of the cylinder housing, and the intake valves and the exhaust valves are external. And you can see the springs and the lifters there in that photo. You can also see the aluminum crankcase and the aluminum oil pan there down on the bottom. This is installing the motor in the frame. The front of the motor hangs on that crossbar that goes across the top in the front, and there are two motor mounts in the rear. And this is the motor after we did most of the wiring on it. You can see the distributor there and the magneto. There's two sets of spark plugs and two sets of spark plug wires, and also the cooling chamber passageways on top are brass. It's a work of art. This is the water pump. It's got an aluminum casing, and it's driven on that shaft that I told you about earlier that comes off of the front of the motor that's driven by the camshaft gear. This is the starter, and it's a Westinghouse starter. It was built in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this was also rebuilt by Bob Smith in Gardnerville. He was our electrical guru that did all of our electrical restoration. This is a Westinghouse generator. And interestingly, we didn't find this out for a while, but it doesn't produce enough current to charge the battery. It will only power the lights if you turn the headlights and the spotlight on. And I never was really clear in understanding why that was the case. But the electrical experts assured me that that was the case, and that that's why it's called an automobile lighting generator. This is the flywheel, the clutch, and the drive shaft. We had the clutch rebuilt by Fort Wayne Clutch in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it's been doing a really good job for us. This is the radiator. It originally had a honeycomb radiator, but at some point during its life, the radiator was replaced with a more modern radiator. And we probably sometime prior to 1950, that's what I mean by modern, but we used the updated radiator that was installed in it before we purchased it. And Courtesy Radiator in Reno boiled it out and tested it, and it was still in good shape. The front there that you see is a mock-up. It's a thin sheet of an original honeycomb radiator, but it's not the original honeycomb radiator. This is a batch of parts back from the plater, and we used ABC plating in Sparks, and they did really good work for us. We were real happy with it. It's not museum quality plating, but when you start trying to do museum quality plating, the cost gets to be really expensive. And we went the economy route and did the best we could with the money we had. And it came out really nice. You can see our bell there and the bracket for the spotlight and the two front hubcaps there in the front and the oil filler spout in the front there. And at the back, you can see the hubcaps for the rear axles. These are the front tires. And if you noticed in the earlier pictures, the front tires were worn just about down to the rims. With all the steering that goes on with the rear, the front tires wear down a lot faster than the rear tires. And that's why today they want you to rotate your tires. Well, we got new tires at Akron Bandag, and they have the original Overman cushion tire molds. So those are authentic Overman cushion tires. These are the rear wheels, and you can see we're going through the same process on these that we went through on the front wheels. We had to paint the wooden parts with a separate paint from the metal parts. So everything had to be taped off and painted. And then when we got through with the wood parts, we taped them off again and painted the metal parts. And we painted all those ourselves. This is Dale Weber from Weber Graphics and Sparks. He did all of the graphic artwork, the pinstriping and gold leafing on both the tractor and the trailer, except for the hood ornaments and the seat ornaments. Those were done by Ken Soderbeck in Michigan, and they were transfer applications, but Dale Weber was the one that transferred them on and made sure they looked good. And all of our decorations had an additional coat of clear coat applied over the top color coat. So on every part that has decorations on it, there are at least 4 layers of paint. This is some of Dale's work, the fenders and the wheels. Dale has family that were in the fire service, so he's treated us real good too. He had a real love for this stuff as well. And he did a bunch of research to see how it was done. And he became very well versed in doing gold leaf, and our stuff came out beautiful. And I want to thank Dale tremendously for all the help he gave us. I don't know if I mentioned or not, but I told you about the electric starter motor, but this motor also has a hand crank. So during the early 1900s, the electric starters and batteries were just being developed. So they didn't trust them a lot, and the batteries were not real reliable. So most of the vehicles, even if they had an electric start, they came with a hand crank as well. And that's what you see in the left-hand picture. There is the handle for the hand crank that attaches to the front of the crankshaft. And the 2 pieces in the picture with that are the firewall supports, and to the right is the firewall. And that side is the side that faces the engine compartment. You can see the part there that supports the hood. And this is the artwork that Ken Soderbeck in Michigan did for us. This was modeled after the artwork that is on the hood of the 1917 American LaFrance in Harrah's National Auto Museum. They have one of the sister rigs to our ladder truck. It's a 1917 chemical engine that was purchased by Reno Fire Department at the same time. And it still has its original artwork on the hood. And we took pictures of that, and Ken Soderbeck was able to reproduce that for us, and Dale Weber transferred that to the hood. And it's absolutely a work of art. Here's another picture of the engine compartment with the firewall and the radiator installed. Here's the seat. It's made out of a single piece of cowhide leather, steer leather, and it was reupholstered by Terry at Classic Restorations in Reno, Nevada. Again, we're very happy with the work he did. This picture is in February of 2013, before we installed the fenders and when we first got it running under its own power. You can see it starting to come together here. Here's a picture of the tractor after we got the fenders and everything else installed on the tractor. This photograph was touched up for us by Art Images and Sparks, a graphic design company. They also helped us by producing some posters that we sell and doing some informational placards for our displays. After we got the tractor done, we started on the trailer. And the firefighter that had the sandblaster, his the diesel motor that powered the compressor had a failure, so we weren't able to use a firefighter's sandblaster. So we hired a media blaster that had a water-based garnet media blaster, and he came and blasted all the rust and paint off of the trailer. This shows the process of painting the trailer. We did the same thing on the trailer that we did on all the other parts. It was after it was sandblasted. The sandblasting leaves a fairly rough surface on the material. So we went over every inch of these parts with the wire wheels and got them semi-polished so that they would look good with paint. In the right-hand picture, you can see the front fifth wheel ring that supports the aerial ladder mechanism. And in the left picture, you can see the rear axle and leaf springs on the trailer. The gentleman in the right-hand picture is Chester Ross, and he was my main right-hand man. That he was there most of the time when I was working, helping me out, and lots of other people came and went and helped when we needed it, but Chester was there just about every day that I worked. This is the racks, the rear racks on the trailer that held the steering column for the rear axle. And you can see in the picture here the steps that you would use to climb up to the tiller seat. But we took all of the racks off the trailer and painted them separately. The left-hand picture here shows the ladder rack on the rear of the trailer with the steering column installed on the trailer. The picture on the right shows the front wheels. No, those are the trailer wheels, actually, after they were clear coated at Rupert's Auto Body in Carson City. They did the clear coating for us over the direct decorations. This is when we attached the trailer back to the tractor. And that was the first time in over 50 years that the tractor and the trailer had been connected together like they were originally intended to be. You can see that the trailer does not have any wooden parts on it at the bottom. Those, when we got it, the wood was all rotted away, and we had to reproduce all of that. But this picture shows all of the wooden parts that are not there. And this is Mark Poirier, our head carpenter. He built the running boards for the trailer. And I forget how long they were, but we had to join several lengths of plywood together to form the length of the running board of the trailer. And he was the one that did all the joining and preparation and helped us paint. The right-hand picture shows the running boards and the tool support platform boards that were after they're installed on the trailer in the center of the trailer. And here's Chester Ross installing the trim on the running boards of the trailer. Here's another batch of plating back from ABC Plating and Sparks. There is this left-hand picture is showing 3 of our Dietz lanterns, another spotlight bracket, what looks like the handles for the ladder locks on the trailer, and the handrail brackets for the grab rail on the trailer, and the ID plate for the ladder. Our ladder is American Automatic Aerial Ladder number 188. It has a separate serial number from the tractor. The tractor is number 1775, and the ladder is registered number 188. The right-hand picture shows our fire extinguisher champagne bucket style holders and the crank wheels for the aerial ladder mechanism that were chrome plated. This picture shows the ball bearings in the 5th wheel. We took all the ball bearings out and cleaned them and cleaned the bearing race and reinstalled them. These are the ground ladders being refinished. Will Ransom took this on as a Eagle Scout project, and he and his group of supporters did a great job and refinished all of our ground ladders for us and saved us months of work. And I want to thank Will Ransom very much. This is the start of the aerial ladder. We purchased 5 40-foot Douglas fir beams from Zippo Logs in Eugene, Oregon. And they helped us with the shipping to get them down here. And then L&L Reclaim Wood and Sparks has a warehouse, and they specialize in old wood repurposing. And they provided us a space to store the beams. So the beams had to be stored. We didn't know how long it would be, but it wound up being 18 months until the moisture content in the wood reached 12%. 12% is the optimum moisture level for ladders. It's a balance between the moisture content and the strength of the wood and the weight of the ladder. So 12% gives you the best combination of weight and strength. There's another couple pictures of the beams as they were stored in L&L Reclaim lumber. The rungs of the aerial ladder are made out of hickory, and we purchased our hickory rungs from the same company in San Francisco that provides the rungs for the San Francisco Fire Department, which still makes all of their own wooden ladders. And the rungs of our ladders were made by the Nevada Woodchucks. It's a local group in Reno that does woodworking projects, and one of their main service projects is that they make wooden toys for children to distribute at Christmas. But they did a great job for us in making our rungs for our aerial ladder. These pictures show us building the ladder. We built that in the back room at L&L Reclaim Lumber, and they helped us with some of their large woodworking machines that we had to do the final sizing of the beams and make sure they were the correct dimensions, and having some big equipment like they have made it a lot easier. We sanded everything down and oiled and varnished all the aerial ladder in preparation for installing it in the aerial. My wife and her sister helped us with the standing, Cindy Wagner, and they're pictured at left. And then in the right-hand picture is Bruce Brown and Chester Ross, 2 more of the guys that helped us a lot. This is a picture of the tractor and trailer when we first put them together after we got the running boards on. And you can see the ladder racks are still being worked on. Here we have another picture from 2017 where we have installed the ladder racks and the ground ladders are on the trailer. Then we started installing the aerial mechanism and the aerial ladder. And you can see at various times during this whole process, we needed a lot of help, and people showed up when we called, and I don't have the time or the memory to remember everybody who helped, but this is a representative thank you to all of them. And this is the tractor and trailer with the aerial ladder mechanism and the aerial ladder installed about the summer of 2019, before we had the decorations done on the trailer. We transported the rig over to Weber Graphics and Sparks, and Dale did all of the pinstriping and gold leafing on the trailer and the aerial ladder at that time, and did another wonderful job. And Cal Nevada Towing has transported this stuff for us several times, and they are the towing company that the fire department uses, and they're under contract with the city, but they've also always given us a really great price, and I want to thank them for that. This is the 1917 tractor drawn aerial at a open house that we had in October of 2020. This is a picture of the front of the tractor. And you can see on this the radiator badge. We have the build sheets for this apparatus, and the Reno Fire Department special ordered the old style radiator badge for this radiator. The newer ones from 1917 on, American LaFrance used a radiator badge that fit in the radiator, not on the shell of the radiator. But this was the earlier style, and it is correct for this apparatus because it was special ordered. And if you contrast this picture with the earlier picture I can show you, or I showed you earlier, the intake manifold is polished now, and this is what it looks like now. We left the side panels off of the hood because we thought everybody would enjoy seeing the motor. The motor is very unique, and I go to car shows all the time, and I see people with their hoods up, and to me that takes away from the clean lines of the vehicles that you leave the hood on up on. And I really like the way that we did this, where we can leave the hood down and still see the motor. This is the exhaust side, and you can see the Reno siren sticking out there from the right-hand side. It was one of the earliest electric sirens for emergency vehicles. Here's a apparatus fire extinguisher and two Dietz Fire King lanterns installed on the running boards of the trailer. These are some pictures from our most recent display. In the right-hand side is the vice president of my restoration group, Reno Fire Antique and Classic Apparatus, Kevin Sear. He just retired in June, so he's joined the ranks of the retired firefighters. Here are some more photos from the display we had at Hot August Nights about a week or so ago. Shows some close-ups of some of the decorations. And on the back of the trailer there at the bottom, you can see two leather buckets. And those are period correct, and they are reproductions, but they had leather buckets back in 1917 when this trailer was in service. These are some historic photos from when the truck was in service. That's the end of the restoration part of this presentation. The next photos are some pictures from when it was in service in Reno from 1917 to 1940. This picture shows the rig on Virginia Street, just north of First Street, where the Clay Peters building was. And that is the location of the current City Hall building. And there's three pictures here with that same location. So look at this, and now look at the next one. Shows guys climbing the ladder. I believe these pictures were taken when the rig was pretty much brand new, and the fire department was showing this ladder off to the citizens of Reno. And this shows the firemen at the top of the building. This is a photograph of the ladder truck at the old Central Fire Station, which was at the corner of Commercial and West Streets in downtown Reno. And you can see it's up on the tower. The tower there was the bell tower, and the bell was used to send out alarms and notify the firemen of fires in the early days of the Reno Fire Department. And we still have the bell that was in that tower in our museum. The ladder truck served on the 1922 Riverside Hotel fire. Here's a picture of the fire, and here's a picture of the ruins afterward. And if you look right in front of the building, you can make out the trailer of the 1917 light right there in front of the building. That's the old Virginia Street Bridge there. This is some pictures of the ladder truck at the 1928 Golden Eagle Hotel fire. Here you can see the firemen climbing the wooden ladder into the smoke with no breathing apparatus. This is a picture of all the fire apparatus of the Reno Fire Department in 1929. And it's a good picture of the old Central Fire Station. And there on the left-hand side, you can see the 1917 American LaFrance ladder truck. This is the picture of the ladder truck on Center Street. In the background, you can see the top of the Golden Hotel, and I think the Palace Club there is right there in front of it. I have just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to run through the other apparatus that are in the Reno Fire Department Museum collection real quick. This is our 1904 horse-drawn Tillard City Service ladder truck. And that picture is taken in the Reno Rodeo Parade on the new Virginia Street Bridge. This is Reno's first motorized fire engine. It's a 1916 Seagrave. It had two chemical tanks, and the chemical tanks were soda acid that produced carbon dioxide that pressurized the tanks and pushed the water out of the tanks through the hoses to the fire. This is a 1927 American LaFrance, a 1000 GPM Metropolitan pumper. This is a 1947 American LaFrance, 1250 gallon minute pumper. It was called the City Pump. We have a 1956 Ford that was a general purpose vehicle in the fire department since it was new. This truck was built in San Jose, California. This is our 1961 American LaFrance under the new Reno Arch. And this rig served as Reno Engine 3, and it ran out of the old Engine 3 that was located at the corner of South Virginia Street and California Avenue. And this is a 1972 American LaFrance 1500 GPM pumper that we hope to restore someday. And that is the end of the show.
Oh, that was wonderful, Jon. That was very exciting. So
Thank you very much.
I see one question, but I know I've got a couple questions. So if people do have questions for Jon about, he was so detailed in his presentation, please write them in the chat and we'll be able to answer some questions. All right, so the first question is, and this was one of the questions I was going to ask, where is the Reno Fire Department Museum, or where is it going to be? So.
Well, the museum was in the fire station at 200 Evans Avenue, but that was torn down in 2008, and we have not gotten any space to replace the public part of the museum. All of the apparatus in the museum are in a warehouse in storage in Reno right now. And we try and take them out for parades and hot August nights and any other chance we get invited or have an opportunity to show them to the public of Reno.
Is there a chance with the city that you guys might have an opportunity to get a museum space to showcase your collection?
Well, we've always got our feelers out, and every once in a while something comes up. We've got one possibility right now, but there's no guarantees that that's going to come through for us. But we are open to any possibilities of displaying this place, the stuff where the people can see it, as long as it's a secure location.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there is another question. Where did the 1917 ladder truck go after 1940? You said that somebody had purchased it or in 1950. So do you know that time period between 40 and 50 or?
Yes, in 1940, it was either sold or transferred through the federal government, we're not sure exactly what arrangement was made, but it was stationed at Treasure Island Naval Station in San Francisco Bay during World War II from 1940 to 1945. And sometime during that time, the aerial ladder was removed from the trailer. So that's why we didn't get it. And when the person that we purchased it from purchased it at an fire apparatus surplus auction in 1950 in the Bay Area. So he had it for 56 years, and then we purchased from him in 2006. And all of the records from the Treasure Island Naval Station are in a warehouse in Treasure Island, and I believe that's owned by the city of San Francisco right now. But there are some hazardous materials contamination issues with Treasure Island. I heard there is radiation contamination there because the island was used as a naval base up until the 70s, I believe, and they had nuclear vessels there and nuclear weapons there, and there's some contamination issue that needs to be dealt with, and none of the records from the fire department that would maybe show what happened to our rig are open to the public. They're all in storage.
Oh, that's too bad, but that's a very interesting kind of story.
Yes.
So I do have another question. How many hours did you spend researching on the parts for the truck, dealing with the restoration? I mean, you spent a lot of time, and I found it fascinating. You mentioning 12% of moisture for the ladder. I mean, that's very specific. So how long, because it's been a long process for you to work on this, how much time would you estimate, have you been dealing with, doing the research for this vehicle?
Well, we've been doing the research on it the entire time that we were building it. I mean, we're still researching, trying to find more photographs of the rig or more stories of the rig. I go on to newspapers.com every once in a while and see if they've got any new stories about the rig. I don't know how many hours I did. We didn't keep track of how many hours it took to restore this rig, but we did spend in the neighborhood of $75,000 with most of the labor being donated. So that was, and quite a few businesses in Reno and Sparks either donated their services or gave us, the good guy price.
Sherry, could I ask?
That's wonderful. I mean, museums and nonprofits really benefit from that. And
Absolutely.
You can really see the labor of love for sure. What I was impressed about was your pictures of the chrome, and you were saying that was the cheaper end. I thought they looked pretty good. So it makes you go, gosh, what is it really, if you're dealing with higher, more expensive, what does that look like? So I thought that was interesting. Oh, I do have another question here for you.
Can I interrupt real quick?
How did you track down?
There's a saying in the car restoration hobby that some cars are 20/20 cars. They look good going 20 miles an hour from 20 feet away. And the chrome and the nickel plating that looks good up close, that's the stuff that's really expensive because it costs a lot of money to get it perfect. Our stuff is more like it would have been when it was a fire truck.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just hadn't thought about it. So I was like, well, geez, what does it really look like? So I did have part of a question to ask from this question. How did you track down like the missing parts? Is there like an organization or a website that kind of lists parts that you're looking for?
Well, actually, most of them we got on eBay. I mean, in the early days of eBay, there was a lot of guys selling a lot of stuff that was very interesting. But now eBay has evolved into a place where people have stores. and they make a living on eBay. And in my opinion, the stuff is not as interesting. And eBay has changed their rules quite a bit, so there's not as much good stuff. I think we were very lucky to be doing this when we did and finding what we did on eBay. But they also have regional and national fire swap meets. There is a national fire truck collectors group called SPAMFA, and we're part of that. And that's actually how we originally found this rig. The guy that owned it from 1950 was a member of SPAMFA in California, and he hadn't been an active member for 30 years, but he still knew a lot of the active SPAMFA members in California. And when he wanted to sell this rig, he contacted them, and the California chapter of SPAMFA sent an email to the Nevada chapter of SPAMFA and let them know it was available. And I heard about that and got down there and was able to buy it.
That's awesome. That's wonderful that they took that extra time to let you guys know about it. I did have a question. The ladder, how long is it? You know, when you were showing the third picture, and then the other picture where, you know, they're at the bell, how tall, how high up can you get, I guess would be the question I have with the ladder.
It's 85 feet.
Ooh, okay. Okay. I knew it looked tall, but I don't have it judged.
That's the distance. That is the distance from the ground to the tip of the ladder is 85 feet when it's extended.
Oh, okay. Okay. And here's a nice comment from Frank Mullen. A great presentation, John. I had no idea the rig was in such bad shape when the restoration began. It was more of a resuscitation than a restoration. Beautiful job. The collection must be preserved and a proper museum established. Yeah, definitely. And anybody that is listening and, you know, wants to send a letter to city officials or, you know, wants to learn more, how can they get in touch with your group to volunteer? Or I guess that would be something else to ask that you can let people know.
Well, we have a Facebook page. It's under Reno Fire Antique and Classic Apparatus. It's RFACA is the acronym, but it's Reno Fire Antique and Classic Apparatus. And you can contact me through our Facebook page.
Okay, that is wonderful. Neal, do you have any questions or comments you would like to say?
Yeah, just one. John was very instrumental in helping Jerry Fenwick and I out on a project. Maybe he can tell you about that.
Well, as a lot of people probably know, Neal and Jerry have authored a series of books of photographs that's titled Reno Then and Now. And they're very interesting books. But we have a picture of a Reno Fire Department steamer pumping water at the corner of First and Virginia Street at the fire hydrant there. And we believe the picture is the last time that a steamer was used in Reno on a fire. And it was during the mop-up of the 1922 Riverside Hotel fire. Okay. So that's a very interesting photograph. And we got at the time, I think it was probably 5 years ago, we got a modern fire engine and parked it in the same location and recreated that photograph for Jerry and Neal for their book. But I also wanted to mention that Jerry Fenwick donated the majority of the gold leaf that we used to decorate our engine. He had the gold leaf from when his family was in business in Reno, and he never knew what to do with it. But we were lucky enough that he thought of us, and he donated 4 or 5 books of gold leaf to us that Dale Weber used to apply to our the tractor of our ladder truck. But thank you guys for doing that.
And there's another comment. John, this is Ann and Britt we now realize how proud you are when you talk about your truck. And truly, you know, truly the whole group has done amazing work, and the artwork and just all of it. It's very impressive. So is there any other events? You know, you just said you did stuff with Hot August Nights. Is there anything planned out, you know, in the next several months or year that people
Well,
can come and see some of your equipment?
usually in October, we have an open house at the warehouse during Fire Prevention Week. So that's usually I think the second week of October, maybe the second Saturday of October. But if we do that, we will put out notices on our Facebook page, and I have an email list of people that I notify also. We had a very small open house, and we didn't publicize it very much last year because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how this year is going to shake out with the new Delta variant and all that stuff that's going on, but
Yeah.
we will at least try and have the rigs pulled outside so people can come and see them. We do have the advantage that it is outside. So hopefully we can do something in October. And then generally we have a couple rigs in the Reno Veterans Day Parade on November 11th.
Okay. That's lovely. Well, anybody that is watching this program, you definitely want to check their website and our Facebook page and see, you know, how you can have a chance to see the equipment. And it's been a wonderful program. And just, you know, another comment was, you know, on behalf of the Reno firefighters, thank you, Jon, and for your contributions to our proud heritage. And truly it is. And I also want to thank you too, as part of the Historical Society, because I knew Jon many years ago when he started volunteering here at the Historical Society and sharing and digitizing a lot of the Reno Fire Department photos. And so Jon and I have been talking about it, and I'm going to do some research, and you know, we're continuing to add more photos and collections online for people to research. And so we want to try to get some of those images on our website as well. So just Jon's very passionate about how he's helped the fire department and even the Historical Society. So thank you, Jon. It's been wonderful. So I think if that's it, then I think we should turn it back to the library. And thank you, Samantha, and everybody, as always, for helping us create a great program. And thank you again, Jon. It was a wonderful program. So
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sherry Hazorn and Neal Cobb and Jon Wagner with the Nevada Historical Society, and Russell, our Washoe County Library Systems Tech Wizard, for making this event possible today. Thank you all. Have a good day.
thank you.